Before we begin the following program, we would like to say that, in our opinion, it is not suitable for children or those of you who are of a Marxist or misandrist disposition.
The Return of RTD. Well, I didn't see that coming. I take it I'm meant to be excited about this. Well, I'm not. And you shouldn't be either.
Oh, no.
Oh, for God's sake!
I don't like it.
I know you don't.
No.
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 But you can't rewrite history, not one line.
People spend all their time making nice things, and other people come along and break them.
It's the end.
You're the cause of this disaster.
The news that RTD is coming back to be the showrunner of Doctor Who is, on the face of it, good news. About the only bit of good news that we've had since the cast Shitika. But hold on a minute. Curb your enthusiasm. Don't get carried away just yet. Doctor Who, under Chris Chibnall, is what the Americans call a dumpster fire. And anyone who thinks RTD is coming back to piss on the flames is deluding themselves. RTD is, like his successors, a lefty, and the BBC is still a leftist outfit. So lefty ideology of the sort that gave us the bollocks that is the timeless child is still going to be there. And RTD is on record as saying that gay characters should only be played by gay actors, which is very progressive and inclusive, but that's how lefties think. So before the fan sheep get carried away, let's stop and think for a moment about what this actually means for the future of Doctor Who, because there are some questions that we really need answers to. Question 1. Why? Why did RTD come back? Commercially, the answer is that the Bolshevik Broadcasting Corporation have finally realised that the Vagina Doctor is a bad idea. The viewing figures are cratering. What merchandise there isn't selling, and they need to salvage something from the Chibnall car crash. If RTD had said no, they probably would have cancelled it. So there's more than likely an element of emotional blackmail and guilt tripping going on here. There's possibly also some white knight syndrome at play, but RTD is still a lefty, working for the same lefty BBC that signed off on the Vagina Doctor and the Timeless Child. Compare Doctor Pooh in 2021 with Doctor Who when RTD was in charge back in 2006, and it's no wonder Piers Wanker begged him to come back and name his price for doing so, which on the face of it seems to be making the show a co-production with Bad Wolf, headed up by his mates Julie Gardner and Jane Tranter. Artistically, the answer is a bit of an unknown at this point. There's an unwritten rule amongst TV professionals that you never go back to a show you used to be part of, partly to avoid unfair comparisons with what you did first time around. A bit like Ronaldo returning to Manchester United, nobody foresaw the second coming of RTD. RTD2, as we'll call him from now on, clearly thinks he can make the show a hit again in 2023 like RTD did in 2005. History may very well be repeating itself, with a dead show heading for a glorious resurrection, but can even RTD escape the law of diminishing returns? Can lightning really strike twice? I doubt it. Coming back is a reputational risk, but the BBC are desperate for what was once a hit show to be a hit again, and start bringing in some grotzits to make up for all the licence fee payments they've lost lately. And since Neil Gaiman is too busy with Good Omens 2 and Sandperson, they begged RTD to return. Question 2. The 60th. RTD's second stint in charge will start with the 60th anniversary special in 2023, but Shitika is going to regenerate in the final not-so-special of 2022. So Dr. 14, whoever that is, will presumably debut in the closing moments of the last Chibnall episode of 2022, and their first episode proper will be RTD's first in 2023, the 60th. Or maybe they'll do a War Games and simply have Shitka start to regenerate but cut to the credits, like I did in the fan edit of Twice Upon a Time, before we see who she regenerates into. That would let RTD2 start with a clean slate like he did with Rose, with a new Doctor and no backstory to clog things up. If they did do a Rose 2.0 for the 60th, that would allow for the 14th TV Doctor to not necessarily be the one directly after Shitka. They could have an unspecified gap, allowing for more previously unknown of Doctors to turn up later, like John Hurts did. Personally, I don't think we even need a 60th. I mean, how do you top them all turning up at the end to save the day? You can't, so RTD shouldn't even try. But he probably will. And if he does, he'll probably fail. So the 60th will be Doctor 14, plus David Tennant, because David Tennant is the only bankable name they have that guarantees an audience. Remember the whole Time Lord Victorious thing? That was built around him and not Shitka, the only time something like that hasn't had the current Doctor as its focus. Because she's shite. So the 60th will be Doctor 14, plus David Tennant, and the Daleks, obviously, unless Doctor 14 is David Tennant, which brings us to question 3, the 14th Doctor. Who will RTD2 cast as the 14th Doctor? Well, the lazy and obvious option would be to recast David Tennant, only getting to play it with his own Scottish accent and that beard he seems so fond of these days. Hugh Grant, the original choice for 2005. Eddie Redmayne, J.K. Rowling's very own Matt Smith. Michael Sheen, well, he's a taffy and a lefty, so that's possible I suppose, but that would make the 60th into Good Omens 3, if Sheen and Tennant were reunited as Doctor 14 and Doctor 10 again. Casting the Doctor is the one thing RTD2 has got to get right. The Vagina Doctor has been a complete disaster, and should either be retconned or completely ignored, forgotten about, and let's just pretend it never happened. So Doctor 14 will either be a diversity and inclusion casting with the right skin colour and personal pronouns, or it'll be an actor who's really suited to the part. Like Tennant again, or McGann again, since it's canon that there are future Doctors who look like previous Doctors, like Tom Baker's Curator. But hey, canon and continuity. Who gives a fuck about that these days? Question 4. The Timeless Child. Will RTD2 retcon the retcon and re-establish William Hartnell as the first Doctor? I doubt it. For one thing, doing so would probably get him barramoned by the Twitterati Taliban. For another, in his novelisation of Rose, he established his progressive and inclusive credentials in Chapter 8, Shed of Secrets, where he not only retcons the inclusion of the post-Eccles Doctors, but also includes a tall, bald black woman holding a flaming sword, and a young girl or boy in a high-tech wheelchair with what looked like a robot dog by their side. So it looks as if RTD2 is on side with the notion that the Doctor can be anybody, instead of who he's always been. So don't hold your breath for him retconning away the retcon. Best you can hope for is that he simply ignores it. So, RTD2. Wow. On the plus side, we'll probably get a decent logo, a decent TARDIS interior, one companion, who could well be called Penny. But don't think for 1 minute that RTD coming back means the show is going back to being the show it used to be when he was in charge first time around. The reason the show was so successful back when Tennant was the Doctor was that RTD was a populist who knew that the fan audience by itself wasn't enough. You had to appeal to the biggest general audience possible to ensure Doctor Who never got cancelled again, let alone spawn an MCU-style multiverse of shows on BBC iPlayer. RTD2 may well fancy himself as the BBC's Kevin Feige, But where are all these spin-off shows coming from? There's no Torchwood because Barrowman's been cancelled, no Sarah Jane Adventures because dear old Liz Sladen, God bless her, is no longer with us, which just leaves the Paternoster Gang, Clara and Me, and River Bloody Song, all of which belong to Lefty Muftwat, not RTD2. So if there aren't going to be any spin-off shows, RTD2 is going to have to create them from scratch, which doesn't necessarily guarantee that they'll get an audience. So I know what you're thinking. Is the grumpy old fan going to get back on the fan bus? Well, right now I'd have to say that I would certainly consider watching Doctor Who again for the first time in 6 years, depending on who gets cast as the Doctor. But I am not jumping back on the fan bus today just because RTD2 is back. Now, there are some in fandom who are creaming themselves over RTD coming back, and it's interesting that the Twitter Taliban have been strangely silent on the subject. No awkward questions about Barrowman or complaints about a white bloke being in charge again instead of a transgender lesbian of colour whose personal pronoun is they instead of she. There are plenty of sheep in fandom who think the return of RTD is, to coin a phrase, a new hope. But I reckon it's a false hope. The appointment of RTD2 is nothing less than a desperate attempt on the part of the BBC to find someone who can regenerate Doctor Pooh into Doctor Who again, into a show that's worth watching again, a show that's for a mass audience again, instead of the virtue-signalling antisocial inadequates of the Twitter sphere and the brain-dead NPCs who still read DWM and buy Big Finish. Big Finish. We love virtue signalling. It's a cynical move on the part of the BBC to bring RTD back. The fan sheep are already getting excited and they think it's going to be all unicorns and rainbows and back to the glory days, especially if he does cast Tennant again. But RTD2 is only back for one reason: to reanimate Doctor Who's cold, dead corpse. The best we can hope for is that he gives us the Doctor Who equivalent of Daniel Craig's fuchsia velvet feminist double O woke, James Bland. So by all means, wave goodbye to Dr. Pooh, to Shittiker and Chibnall. Don't let the TARDIS door hit your arse on the way out, and be glad they're gone. Hallelujah. But don't celebrate too much just yet, because I don't think RTD2 is going to turn Dr. Pooh back into Doctor Who. I suspect what he's planning for us isn't Doctor Who, but Doctor Woke. Less woke than Doctor Pooh, but still woke. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am.
If you're a lefty and have been affected by any of the issues raised in this program,
Fuck off!